I didn't order any food, so I wouldn't have to split the bill. So I'm 27 and I've been stuck with this friend group since college. There's like 8 of us total, but 2 people in particular, Susan and Greg, are straight up parasites. Every single time we go out to eat, they pull the same garbage move. They'll order the most expensive thing on the menu. Then suddenly they're broke and need everyone else to cover them. It's been going on for years and I'm so sick of it. Like last month, we went to this steakhouse and Greg ordered a $60 ribeye plus appetizers and drinks. Then when the check came, he goes, "Oh man, rent was due this week. Can you guys help me out?" We all ended up paying like $20 extra just for his meal. Susan does the exact same thing every time. So last weekend, my friend Dan texts me about this casual dinner at some restaurant downtown. I immediately tell him that if Susan and Greg are going to be there, count me out. But Dan keeps pushing me to come, saying I should just put my feelings aside for once and join the group. Against my better judgment, I agree to go. I show up and there's 6 of us total. We're all talking and catching up, and then everyone starts ordering. Most people get stuff around $40, which is pretty normal for this place. Then Susan and Greg's turn comes up. Susan orders this lobster dish that's like $95. Plus she gets an appetizer and expensive wine. Greg gets surf and turf for $120 plus drinks. I'm watching this happen, and I already know what's coming next. When the waiter gets to me, everyone's looking at me expectantly. I pick up the menu, scan it for like 2 seconds, point to the 4 Miller Lite, and tell the waiter that's all I want. Dan immediately goes, "Dude, why aren't you eating anything?" I just shrug and say, "I lost my appetite." 2 other friends at the table look at each other, then flag down the waiter to cancel their food orders too. They just got drinks instead. The whole dinner was awkward after that. Susan and Greg are eating their fancy meals while half the table is just sipping beer. I could tell they were getting nervous because they kept picking at their food instead of actually eating it. Then the check comes. The total was insane because of their expensive orders. Greg immediately grabs the waiter and goes, "Can you split this 6 ways?" Without even asking anyone. I stand up and correct him. Actually, split it 3 ways. 3 of us only had drinks. Greg looks at me all confused and goes, "What?" "We always split the bill evenly." I look him dead in the eye and say, "Well, 3 of us didn't eat any food, so we're just paying for our drinks." The math was brutal. Dan, who probably ate like $50 worth of food, got stuck with a $146.98 check. I swear his jaw hit the floor when he saw that receipt. Susan and Greg had to split the rest between them, which was way more than they expected to pay. I slid a $10 toward the check to cover my beer and tip, said goodbye to everyone, and walked out. The looks on Susan and Greg's faces were priceless. They finally realized what it felt like to actually pay for their own expensive meals. The next morning, I wake up to like 15 angry texts from both of them calling me a jerk for forcing them to pay more than they planned. I actually laughed out loud reading their messages. Like the steaks alone cost more than what they ended up paying. Music, I didn't order any food so I wouldn't have to split the bill. I'm 27 and I've been stuck with this same friend group since college, 8 of us total. Most of them are fine, but 2 in particular, Susan and Greg, are absolute parasites. For years, every time we go out, they pull the same scam, order the most expensive meals and drinks on the menu, then suddenly forget their wallet or claim rent is due, leaving everyone else to cover them. Like last month at a steakhouse, Greg ordered a $60 ribeye plus sides and cocktails. When the check came, he gave his usual, "Oh man, I'm short this week. Can you guys help me out?" Everyone caved, and I ended up paying $20 extra just for him. Susan's no better. She once ordered a $90 seafood platter, then acted shocked when the bill showed up, as if we were supposed to be her sponsors. So last weekend, when Dan texted me about dinner downtown, I said no immediately. If Susan and Greg were going to be there, I was out. But Dan kept pushing, saying, "Come on, put your feelings aside for once." Against my better judgment, I went. There were 6 of us total. The conversation was fine at first. Then the ordering started. Most people chose meals around $35–40, but Susan, she ordered a $95 lobster entree, plus a $20 appetizer, plus an expensive glass of wine. Greg smirked and ordered surf and turf for $120 with cocktails. I sat there watching like I was seeing the same bad movie for the 100th time. When the waiter got to me, everyone turned to see what I'd order. I scanned the menu for about 2 seconds, pointed to the $4 Miller Lite, and said, "That's all I want." The table froze. Dan frowned. "Dude, why aren't you eating anything?" I shrugged. "Lost my appetite." Two other friends exchanged a look, then whispered to the waiter to cancel their entrees. They just ordered drinks, too. Suddenly, half the table was sipping beer while Susan and Greg sat there with their mountains of luxury food, picking at it nervously. The vibe was tense. They knew exactly what was coming. When the bill finally arrived, Greg immediately flagged the waiter. "Split it 6 ways," he said confidently. I leaned forward. "Actually, make it 3 ways. 3 of us only had drinks." Greg blinked like he misheard me. "Wait, what?" "We always split evenly." I looked him dead in the eye. "Yeah, well, 3 of us didn't eat any food. We're paying for our drinks only." The math was brutal. Dan, who'd eaten maybe $50 worth, got stuck with a $146.98 check. His jaw literally dropped when he saw the slip. Susan and Greg, who expected everyone else to cover them like always, were forced to split the rest, hundreds of dollars between the two of them. Their smiles were gone. I pulled out a $10, laid it neatly on the table to cover my beer and tip, and stood up. "Good night, everyone." The looks on Susan and Greg's faces were priceless, like they'd just realized the gravy train had derailed. The next morning, I woke up to 15 angry texts. Susan called me selfish. Greg said I humiliated them. I laughed out loud. Their expensive problem cost them less than one of the steaks they'd ordered. For once, they had to pay for their own extravagance. And honestly, that $10 Miller Lite was the most satisfying drink of my entire life. The story, too. After my parents' funeral, who left behind a shoe company worth $150 million, I entered the CEO's office. My wife, already sitting in the CEO's chair, said, "Now I am the CEO of this company. If you do not agree with this, here are your divorce papers." I couldn't help but burst out laughing because my wife was chapter 1, the funeral and the will. The church was heavy with silence, the kind of silence that clings to the air even after the last hymn fades. My parents' caskets lay side by side, polished oak catching the glint of candlelight. I stood there, their only son, numb with grief. To the world, they were tycoons. The founders of a shoe empire worth over $150 million to me, they were just mom and dad. The ones who taught me how to lace my first sneakers, how to run after dreams, and how to stand firm when the world tried to trip me. But even as the priest spoke of legacy and eternity, I noticed something strange. My wife wasn't mourning. She wasn't even pretending. She sat in the front row, chin high, eyes sharp, whispering with 2 board members I barely recognized. Every so often, her hand grazed the edge of a sleek leather folder in her lap. Something twisted in my gut. After the service, relatives came with condolences. Distant cousins offered empty words, but I kept noticing her. Calculating glances, faint smirks, the kind of confidence that doesn't belong in a widow's pew. The next day, the reading of the will confirmed what I already knew. I was the sole heir. Every share, every property, every stitch of the company fell to me. My parents trusted me to carry forward their life's work. But when I walked into the CEO's office for the first time, ready to honor their legacy, she was already there, feet propped on the desk, their desk, my father's chair. She leaned back, diamond necklace flashing like a blade in the light. "Well," she said smoothly, sliding a document across the desk, "here's how this is going to work. I'm the CEO now. If you don't agree, here are your divorce papers." She tapped the folder with manicured nails, smirk widening. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her, then laughed. Not because I was broken, not because I was afraid, but because she had no idea what she just walked into. Chapter 2. The Betrayal in the CEO's Office. Her smirk deepened as I laughed, like she thought my reaction meant surrender. "You think this is funny?" she asked coldly. "The board knows me, not you. I've been laying the groundwork for months. Your parents are gone, and I've already secured their support. You're just an heir, a figurehead. Without me, you're nothing." She slid the divorce papers closer. "Sign these or you'll lose everything. The company, your reputation, even the house." I leaned on the desk, lowering my voice until the arrogance drained from her smile. "You talk like you've already won, but you forgot one detail." Her eyes narrowed. I pulled a slim folder from my jacket and placed it next to hers. It was worn leather-bound with my father's initials embossed on the corner. "This," I said softly, "is the real groundwork." I flipped it open, revealing signed documents, notarized and sealed, outlining the succession plan my parents had drawn up years ago. Not only did I inherit every share of the company, but the bylaws had been amended to ensure no spouse could ever take a controlling role without the heir's written consent. Her hands twitched. You, she stammered. They never told me. Of course they didn't. I cut in because they knew exactly what kind of person you were. The room seemed to shrink around her, her confident posture collapsed, her fingers tightening on the useless divorce papers. I let the silence stretch, then leaned closer with a smile that wasn't kind. So no, you're not the CEO of this company. You're not even the wife of its owner anymore. You're just someone who tried to play queen without realizing the throne was already locked. Her face drained of color, and for the first time, she looked like the one facing exile. Chapter 3. The Hidden Affair. She stared at the succession folder as if it were a death sentence. Her lips parted, searching for words, but none came. I chuckled softly. You thought my laugh was just about the company, didn't you? But it wasn't. Her eyes snapped up, panic flashing. It was because I already knew, I continued, about him. Her chair scraped the floor as she stood abruptly. What are you talking about? I slid a second folder across the desk. This one thicker, filled with glossy photographs, receipts, and copies of emails. Each page was a nail in the coffin of her secret life. She snatched one photo, trembling. It showed her leaving a hotel arm-in-arm with one of the company's senior executives, a man she had been very close to during late-night strategy meetings. Her face drained of color. You had me followed. I leaned back, steepling my fingers. No, you followed yourself carelessly, repeating the same patterns over and over, never once considering I'd notice. You see, people reveal themselves when they think they're untouchable. And you were so busy plotting to take my company, you forgot I was watching. She slumped back into the chair, the papers spilling like snow across the floor. And here's the best part, I said calmly, almost conversationally. Not only are you not CEO, but by next week, the board will know exactly who you've been sleeping with. And when they do, they'll ask the same question I did. Was it love or was it corporate espionage? Her hand shook violently. She tried to speak, but no words came out. I stood, sliding my father's succession folder back into my jacket. Enjoy those divorce papers you brought me. I'll have my lawyer sign them too. Only difference is I'll leave this office with the company, the fortune, and my dignity intact. I walked toward the door, pausing just long enough to add one final blow. Oh, and don't bother calling your lover for help. He's already under investigation for embezzlement. And guess who filed the first report? Her scream echoed through the office as I stepped out, but to me, it sounded like music. Chapter 4, The Boardroom Showdown. The boardroom smelled of leather and old money. Polished oak tables, deep green carpet, portraits of past CEOs staring down like judges from another century. This was where my parents had sat, steering the company from a small workshop into a $150 million empire. Now it was my turn. I stood at the head of the table, the succession documents spread out neatly in front of me. Around me sat the board, men and women who had worked with my parents for decades. Loyal, skeptical, calculating. They were waiting to see if I could carry the legacy. The double doors swung open. My wife entered head high, smile rehearsed, walking like she owned the room. And technically, she thought she did. Ladies and gentlemen, she began smoothly. As you know, I've been working closely with the late CEO's son for years. It was their wish that I helped lead this company forward. That's why I've decided to step into the role of acting CEO until further. Sit down. The words cracked through the room like thunder. Every eye turned to me. My wife froze, her smile faltering. I slid a folder across the polished wood. This is the succession plan signed by both my parents. Legally binding, irrevocable. This company belongs to me and me alone. She tried to recover, but I wasn't finished. I opened the second folder, the one filled with photos, emails, and financial statements. The evidence of her affair with the senior executive, the hush that fell over the room, was suffocating. This, I said, holding up the damning photo of her leaving a hotel, is the person she's been working with after hours. The same executive now under investigation for embezzlement thanks to her access. Gasps rippled around the table. The board members exchanged looks, disbelief, disgust, recognition. My wife's face collapsed, the practiced arrogance bleeding into panic. He manipulated me. No, I cut in sharply. You manipulated yourself. You came into this office waving divorce papers, claiming you'd take my parents' company as your throne. But instead, you've exposed yourself as a liability, a traitor, and a fraud. The chairman of the board leaned forward, voice heavy. Is this true? The silence from her lips was all the confirmation they needed. One by one, the board members turned back to me, nodding. The old guard had spoken, and they were with me. I looked at her one last time. She stood trembling in the CEO's chair, the seat she had tried to steal, the seat she would never claim again. "Get out," I said coldly. And with the weight of 100 eyes watching, she picked up her divorce papers, clutched them to her chest like a shield, and stumbled from the boardroom. The sound of the doors closing behind her was the sweetest music I had ever heard. Chapter 5: The Fall of Her Empire. The boardroom humiliation was only the first domino. What followed over the next few weeks was the complete collapse of everything my wife thought she had secured. Her affair partner, the senior executive she had hitched her future to, was officially charged with embezzlement and fraud. The newspapers loved the scandal. CEO's widow caught an embezzlement web. Photos of her leaving hotels with him splashed across tabloids, and suddenly, the glamorous image she tried so hard to maintain had curdled into mockery. She wasn't the cunning new CEO. She was the betrayed accomplice of a criminal. When she stormed into the boardroom, she thought she held power. But when the dust settled, she had nothing. The prenup my parents had insisted on, one she had laughed off as formality, left her with almost no claim to my assets. Worse, the divorce papers she waved in my face turned into a sword against her. I signed them, filed them, and ensured every joint account was frozen. Her credit cards were canceled. Her shopping sprees gone. Her new reality. A studio apartment on the outskirts of the city, her diamond ring quietly listed on a resale site for half its value. Society, the very circle she adored, turned its back on her. The charities she once chaired politely removed her name from committees. Invitations dried up. Former friends whispered behind champagne glasses, relishing her downfall. I heard one line repeated often. She thought she married into a throne, but she walked herself into exile. While her empire crumbled, mine was just beginning. I took the CEO chair, not with arrogance, but with determination. I restructured the company, launched new campaigns, and reminded the board why my parents trusted me. Profits soared within months, and industry magazines ran features titled "Legacy Restored," the heir who saved the 150 million shoe empire. But beyond the numbers, I rebuilt the company into something more, a tribute to my parents. Their values of honesty, resilience, and loyalty became the foundation of every decision. One evening, months later, I left the office late. As I stepped into the parking lot, I saw her waiting near the gates. She looked thinner, worn down, clutching a handbag that was clearly fake. Her eyes pleaded, but her voice was still laced with pride. "You have to help me," she whispered. "They've all abandoned me. You can't just let me fall like this." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said calmly, "You abandoned yourself the day you tried to steal what wasn't yours. My parents built this legacy on love and loyalty. You tried to build your empire on betrayal. That's why you're here, and that's why I'll never pull you back up." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. She just turned and walked into the shadows. As I drove away, I thought of my parents. Their portraits in the boardroom no longer felt heavy, but reassuring. The company was safe, the legacy intact, and the woman who tried to destroy it was gone. Undone not by my hand, but by her own greed. Sometimes revenge doesn't need fire or fury. Sometimes it's simply watching them burn in the fire they lit themselves. Epilogue. The legacy secured. The first anniversary of my parents' passing arrived quietly, but it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. For weeks, I had prepared something special, not just for the company, but for them. I gathered the board, employees, and even longtime customers in the main showroom. Instead of unveiling a new shoe line or announcing another financial milestone, I unveiled something different. The Johnson Legacy Scholarship Fund. Funded by a portion of the company's annual profits, it would provide full scholarships for underprivileged students who dreamed of studying design, engineering, or business, the very fields that built our empire. This company was never about numbers, I told the crowd. It was about people. My parents gave me everything, and today we give back in their name. The applause wasn't just polite, it was heartfelt. And for the first time since their deaths, I felt my parents' presence not as a burden, but as a guiding hand. Later that evening, when the crowd had gone, I walked into my parents' old office. Their chairs sat side by side, just as they had for decades. I placed the original trust papers, the very ones that had saved the company, into a glass frame on the wall.